This whole week, we've got state reps on who've introduced the bills or are co-sponsors to it. And I'm looking at the New Hampshire one right here. It says if gun confiscation starts or martial law is established, the state's not going along with it. This is one of our only hopes. Talking to state representative who's put together this bill in Washington State today, State Representative Matt Shea. Matt, did you know the National Security Council is now basically going to take over every federal agency outside of Congress, and that in the John Warner Defense Authorization Act, it states that the governors will serve at the pleasure of the president during emergencies, will be dual-hatted officers, and that they're deploying 20,000 combat troops, they say, for riot control and crowd control. So, I mean, when you add all of that in, this is very sinister.
It is very sinister, and I think it comes on the heels of a rider to the fiscal year 2007 Defense Authorization Act, which gave the president the ability to federalize National Guard troops without gubernatorial consent in the case of a quote, national emergency. And, you know, again, a very loosely defined term, which for a lot of us here in Washington State is very concerning.
In fact, in there, that nexus is in with Presidential Decision Directive 51 that states for any emergency, including economic or any other designated by the president. So that could be anything.
It could be anything. And, you know, for instance, if unemployment continues to rise, as many are predicting it's going to, and there are some folks that are unhappy about that on the streets of Washington and the streets of other states in the Union. Is that a national emergency, and are troops going to be called out to take care of those folks, or, you know, exactly what does that mean? And many of us haven't got a straight answer when we've asked that question. So,
what are other representatives saying, and what chance does this bill have of passing?
Well, we're trying to get at a hearing right now, and that's the first step in the process, and a lot of the press coverage is putting pressure on the chairman of the committee to help hear this bill. But right now, so far, we haven't had any luck getting at a hearing. But it has been absolutely overwhelming, the amount of emails we've received from all over the United States, the amount of phone calls as well. It's been very encouraging. So the people want to see this thing heard. It's the question of does the Democratic majority here in the state of Washington want to hear this bill?
Well, the good news is, if this tyranny continues to unfold, the pressure will mount with the states. And some states, as you know, like Oklahoma, have passed these resolutions saying no to the New World Order, no to tyranny, no to the FEMA camps, no to the gun confiscation. And so that is legitimizing the general public speaking out against it. And more people are now looking into it. So we're looking at something exponential. So it's good that you've got it written, that you have it waiting, and to try to get it out there on the floor. And as you said, people overwhelmingly know what's going on. I mean, record gun sales by 45%. The previous record, according to FBI instant background checks, which are really instant registration, shows a 45% increase according to any other previous record. And the people snatching the firearms and ammo off the shelves only seems to be accelerating.
It really does. And in the state of Washington, the eastern part of Washington State is extremely conservative. And the western part of the state, at least in the Seattle area, is obviously very liberal. And the folks over there in eastern Washington, which is where I'm from, near Spokane, you know, they're really concerned about this, and they're voting with their pocketbooks and their feet and going to the sports stores and taking ammunition in boxes as they can. And I think that underscores the concern of a lot of the general public on some of these very socialistic programs that are coming down. And I would actually start to use the word communism, because it really is what it is. You know, trying to take over nationalized banks, trying to nationalize different areas of industry, trying to implement this draconian climate change legislation, which is starting to happen here in Washington State, is just, it really isn't about the environment. It's not about anything more than control.
Speaking of that, if you go to whitehouse.gov, he has announced what he said he would do through his White House Chief of Staff, Rahm Emanuel, having local pastors lead governmental committees to, quote, promote solutions to climate change. That means the carbon tax, the cap and trade tax, the taxes on what industry and business is left. And he's talking about this 1 million-man domestic army. I mean, it's one thing for us to talk about how control freaks were planning this. It's another thing to see it happening. Can you speak to that?
Absolutely, I can. There have been 3 bills introduced in the state of Washington, and there has been close conversation between Governor Gregoire here in Washington and Barack Obama's administration on these issues. And I'll give you just a flavor for what this means. Their own numbers, their people testified before one of the committees that I sit on, Ecology and Parks, and said that this is going to cost the average low-income family $750 per family per year in additional higher energy costs and higher costs in products. Now, that's their numbers. I would probably double them as a conservative estimate to give you a real picture of what that's going to cost the average family. And that's their people saying it.
So, sorry, go ahead.
And well, I was just going to say, on top of that, one of the bills they introduced, House Bill 1718 here in Washington State, was going to impose rent control, was going to stipulate when you sold your property that you had to offer the government a first right of refusal if you were within a certain square mile of a transportation hub. You could go on and on about this stuff, but the bottom line is it's going to cost businesses, it's going to cost consumers, and quite honestly, it's going to shut this nation down as far as manufacturing is concerned, in my opinion.
Now, this is on top of the fact that for decades the globalists paid companies to offshore. Our industry's basically gone. The retail industry, the service industry is imploding. And now in the midst of all of this, they're going to bring in all these new taxes, animal ID, premises ID. What's their goal? Destroy free enterprise?
Well, their goal, again, I think, is control. I don't think it has anything to do with protecting the environment or preventing diseases among animals. I think it's about control. Bottom line.
Have you seen? I can dig it out by the number if you'd like it. Have you seen the bill they've introduced to build FEMA camps? And if you read the language, it's the training I witnessed the military doing years ago and warned the public. Now it's in a bill to build FEMA camps that have brigs on them, and the local pastors help organize it, and then the local police and others through the threat integration centers basically move in under Northcom with FEMA camps. So total federalization, taking over every facet of society, using transportation corridors as in other bills. You mentioned that at your state level, where they claim they control everything off of highways. Can you speak to what this looks like?
Well, I am aware of what you're talking about with the FEMA camps. What's very and most particularly disturbing about that is that they're going to be on former military bases, and they're going to use those bases to do that. A ton of people have expressed their concerns that what they're really building are prison camps. I think you're just speaking to that right now. In addition to that, and there's some very eerie similarities between using pastors to pacify people now, as happened in Nazi Germany. And I've done some research on that. There was a paper done by the Office of Strategic Services, the forerunner of the CIA, back at that time, on how the Germans and the Nazi Party, in particular, took the churches and turned them into a vehicle to help pacify people and bring them along with their agenda. And I think it's very scary that that's what's being mentioned right now. As some people say, there's nothing new under the sun.
Well, sir, I'm glad you're so informed. That's why we're having all these state reps on this week, and let's just keep it into next week. Let's just keep having them on, because there's hundreds of great men and women like yourself, Representative, who are saying this. And as we talk to them, it seems we're all on the same page from history. And I notice your degree is in history, so it's great to talk to somebody who is informed. 3 years ago, another host on this network, Pastor Butch Paul, was sent secret FEMA documents. Then I had the pastor on, then another pastor sent me the same documents, hundreds of pages. We didn't know he was already under surveillance, so they came to him and threatened him afterwards. And they had 13,000 preachers covertly hired then to train their flocks for gun confiscation, forced inoculation, to go into the camps. Then Obama and Emmanuel have announced that indeed they're doing this. It's on the White House website today, and they've doubled the number to 26,000. And now we have mainstream media reports saying, oh, the pastors are getting us ready for martial law. It's a good thing. Do what they say when the crisis comes, and everything will be all right. Were you aware of those FEMA documents?
I was not aware of those particular FEMA documents. However, pastors, at least in the state of Washington, and I'm not going to name them for the reasons you stated, are aware that about this type of use of pastors to pacify the people, and they are very concerned about it, number one, and number two, they are prepared to preach the gospel of Jesus Christ even in that scenario, and I'll just leave it at that.
Well, since we've got a few more minutes with you, John, pull up the newscast, and I'm just going to play 30 seconds so he can hear this. I'm going to give him the title. This was one out of Louisiana, but we have other newscasts and reports. Now, understand, this is a year and a half after I got secret documents. John, do you have that for the state rep? He's pulling it up right now. Before I play this short clip, any other key points you'd like to add? How do we, folks all around the country, how do we support you